Hello, my name is Ovi. Most of you know who I am if you're watching this, and for those of you who don't, I'm Ovi. That name comes from the spiritual presence in my life. It came from meditation that happened a couple years back, and Ovi, actually, I found out later that it means doorway. I actually connected spiritually with my ancestry, which happens to be from a Viking nature. I came from a place outside of Chicago that, I look like everyone else. I shaved my face every day. If I left any hair on my face, it was a little goatee. I used to be a completely different person. I've evolved. I've evolved through the spirit, and I've made a lot of discoveries, and I've become more enlightened than ever. And I want to explain to everyone exactly what that entails and where it came from. The first part of my life, I used to go to church. My mom used to send me and my siblings to church. I never really picked up on the idea of Christianity. I went to a Lutheran church, which is irrelevant to me. Christianity is all basically the same. Not much variance in the different levels, whether you're Baptist or Lutheran or whatever. It's all the same shit. It's nonsense. My connections have been going on longer than I ever realized. When I was very young, I started learning how to write English. Okay. I've always pissed off the teachers. This was one of the things that I discovered that I do that's unique to my ancestry. We are connected to our ancestry more than we realize. And so one of the things that I used to do, for example, and it used to really piss off the teachers in grade school and junior high and whatever after that, is write in capital letters. When I wanted to write in cursive, when they wanted me to write in cursive, I always felt the need to write more clearly so that people would understand me in capital letters. So I printed in capital letters whenever I had the chance, unless I was specifically instructed to write in handwriting, cursive, if you will. So I used to tick the teachers off. They said that was not appropriate, and I used to get bad grades in school sometimes because I wanted to write in capital letters. The thing that I discovered later when I was making my spiritual connections and becoming more enlightened and more aware was that my writing actually matched the Norwegian writing, what they call runes. I had a application for a job laying next to me while I was on my laptop, and I was looking at the runes, but I had already filled out the application a couple of days prior to that. And I was looking at the runes, and I said, I didn't understand why the runes looked so familiar. But when I looked at the application for the job, I picked it up and I moved it over to the screen, and I realized that my writing in capital letters looked a lot like the runes. That was really interesting, and that was really kind of moving that coincidence happened. But of course, a spiritual person knows that there's no such thing as coincidence, and randomness there's no such thing. Nothing is coincidental. So, another observation or memory that I've had that matches my ancestry was when I was in the 5th grade. I had a teacher an art teacher that gave everyone scratch paper, like blank, really nice scratch paper and a box of color pencils. And she said, I want everyone in class today to draw whatever is in their heart. A picture of anything. It can be anything. But I want you to draw what's in your mind. And I don't know, but I thought it was because, it was always snowing outside of Chicago. It's always cold up there, nasty. And so I had this fascination with log cabins. And I drew a log cabin with pine trees in the background. And it was kind of boring. The sky on the left-hand side of the page was empty. I drew the moon, but there was something missing. And so I thought that I was actually messing up the picture because I was bored with it. So I started drawing these bands of different colored lines with the color pencils. And I was shading them a certain way, and I was just scribbling. To me, I let the pencils go and my hands go, and I did what the teacher told me to do, and that was to draw from my heart and create from my heart. And the teacher was walking behind the desk, and she walked behind my desk and stood there and started asking me questions about my picture. And she asked me if I had ever been to Alaska. And I said, no, I had never left the state of Illinois. Only on like a short trip with my dad to go see my grandmother in Minnesota. And she said, so you've never seen the Northern Lights? And I said, no. And she said, equinox, nothing. I never saw it, never knew it existed until she told me. She said, that's what you're drawing on the paper. You're drawing the equinox. And I said, what is that? I have no idea. And she said, you don't know about the colored lights that show up in the sky in the northern regions? And I said, I never heard of that. It was coming out of my heart on paper from an innocent soul. Never heard of it in this life. I didn't know what I was drawing. So something was there. So she was shocked, and she told me it was a beautiful picture. She said I knew now what I was drawing, and that was an actual thing that I was drawing on paper. So at some point, the entire picture was in my heart. The way that the log cabin looked, the snow, the pine trees, everything was in a specific position according to something that was coming from my heart. So, coincidence? There's more. There was the runes. There was the scene from a northern place with snow and pine trees. And there's other things that have happened. When the beard started to grow, I wasn't aware that I was unique or different from anyone else. Where I come from, everybody shaved their face and went to work, and nobody really cared about their ancestry or where they came from or anything. So I didn't care. It was about surviving. When I moved to Florida, I was told I was different. I was unique. I was a ginger. And when beards started to catch on, I wanted to see what I would look like with a beard. And one of my friends, a black guy, had this beautiful beard, and it was so unique and perfect for him. I wanted to know how mine would look if I grew it. So I started growing my beard out, and it was red. And people kept thinking, they kept asking me, oh my gosh, what's your ethnic background? Why do you look like that? And you must be a Viking and blah, blah, blah. And none of this made any sense to me. I thought I looked like everyone else. I didn't know I was unique. Most people don't know if they're unique. Nobody ever says that. So, being that there's a lot of Spanish people here and a lot of dark hair, I started to let the beard grow, and I started to do the research. In the research and with the beard coming out, it amplified the spiritual connection immensely. So, what I started to realize was that I had a certain ancestry. At first, I thought it might have been Irish. And so I did the research on the Irish bloodline, and it didn't match. It didn't fit. Although I am a little Irish on my dad's side, the connection came from my mother's father, who was the big, bald-headed redhead. He was bright red hair and big blue eyes and strong. He was a big guy, very intimidating. And we never paid attention to him. Nobody ever thinks about it, where their ancestors come from. So he died when I was very young, and I never thought about it. I don't look like my dad. I look like my grandfather and my mom's side of the family. I'm aware of that, and I also behave like them. I'm very aggressive. And I've always been ready to fight. Even if I was going to lose, it's the good fight that wins. So, that means that you do fight. Regardless, with no fear. If you think you're going to lose, you still fight. You stand up for yourself. That's what I was always told. My mom told me if that I ever came back with an ass whipping from school, from someone bullying me, that I'd better not come home. So, although I never really had to fight, I was told that. So, I've always been aggressive about making the right thing happen, and I've always been protective and defend my friends. I'm a loyal person, and all of these things come from a certain bloodline. And that's when I started to do the research on my grandfather, who I found out was Swedish and North German and all of the Viking things, Norway, and that's where his ancestors came from. And his name was Alfred, which is a very Viking name. So that's why I identify with the Viking bloodline. I'm not sure if it's even a bloodline, but my spirit comes from this. And that there's no such thing as coincidence. All of the little idiosyncrasies that match that way of life that they experienced before Christianity, the paganism, the belief, the mechanics in the spiritual mentality, they're all here. So, I started meditating, and it has gotten so strong with my meditations that I can influence the physical world around me. And a lot of people might think that that's insane. You have no influence over the spiritual world or the physical world around you through the spirit world. And that's just not the case. Christianity came and snuffed everyone's pagan ancestry. Everything, every religious format started as pagan. And it still is. There's no such thing as spirituality on the platform that Christianity exists on. Christianity is based on a book that was written by men who were not scientific, they were not spiritual, and they were in need of control over other people, whether it hurt them or not. A lot of people were hurt by Christianity, but that's not what this is about, so I don't want to go there. I would like to think of myself as a pagan Buddhist, kind of a hybrid spiritual platform. It's a lifestyle. I do things that nobody understands, most people don't understand, or most people don't know how to do by theirself. I've learned how to do things from meditating and they work. I don't want to go into a list of the things that I feel like I can do, but I have a big influence over my spirit and other people's spirit around me. It's scary. It's so powerful sometimes. And people that understand my spirit, and they understand that everyone is capable of using and channeling energy around them, when they start to use it and I help them engage it, they know it works as well. So my point is, there's a balance that happens between the light and the dark, the yin and the yang, if you will. I try to center myself, and it's always been my philosophy, ever since I could think about it, to be aware of both the light and the dark. If you are unaware of the dark side because you're too far into it, if you're a drug addict, if you are hurting other people because of selfish reasons or hurting other things, you're in the dark and you're unaware of what's happening to you. And if you are a fanatical, rule-abiding Christian that follows Christian rules and things that other people have written for you and told you this is how it's supposed to work, you are staring directly into the sun, and that makes you blind. You're blind whether you're too far right or you're too far left. If you are in the center and you can see both and tolerate both, you are grounded and you are centered and you can see what happens and what exists in the light and the dark, and that is absolutely necessary for you to exist on a spiritual level and on a physical level. 100% physical world aware doesn't mean anything. That means that you're educated and you read some books that somebody else wrote for you and they told you that's how it works and that's what you believe. But you don't know for yourself because it's not from your experience that it works. And if you are experiencing a spiritual world and you take it too far, like an addict does, you go off the deep end and you forget that you live in a physical world. In this world, we are both spiritual and physical. We are both energy and mass. And that's science. And that science meets spirit. It's a balance of everything. Here we have what is a Celtic cross. I had it tattooed on me before I actually knew what it meant. But I felt so moved by the design that I had it tattooed on my body, which I thought was kind of silly and stupid at first until I realized what it meant. A Celtic cross means it's 4 stations. There's 4 ends on it. They're all equal. One is fire, one is water, one is air, and one is earth. In the center of those elements is creation. It means you need those elements to create whatever. Life is created by the elements. I didn't know that before I had it tattooed on my body. I also didn't know that the Celtic braid, which is an offshoot of my Celtic cross, means if you follow it metaphorically, if you follow it, it's everlasting life because it keeps going. You just keep repeating the same cycle. Therein, before I knew what it meant, I had this tattooed on my body, and guess what? I created this tattoo. I drew it on paper. Just like the log cabin and the equinox that I drew, I created my tattoo. So, now we have the presence of another spiritual thing that didn't exist, that existed before I realized how much it influenced my life. I have everlasting life because I understand how to use the elements to create it. So, that's what the tattoo means. We all have everlasting life. And what that means is, in the cycle, we all have to repeat it until we learn how to manifest happiness in our own universe or existence, if you will. And we have to learn how to be happy. That's as simple as it gets. You can go through the spiritual world and you can go through the spiritual way if you'd like. But the reason why we exist is to learn one simple lesson. And we have to come back here over and over and over again as some kind of life form until we learn how to be happy and how to create happiness. And that's why I do what I do. I like to make people happy because it generates positive electricity. It generates positive energy. I love to make people happy because when everyone is happy about what's this representing the universe in front of them, it charges my soul. And I become so powerful in a very positive way that I cry tears of joy because my cup overfilleth. And it makes me able to see everything with my third eye. Physically, the pineal gland is the gateway. It's the bridge, if you will, that connects the spirit to the physical. It's our antenna. It's just not on the outside, like we would perceive aliens to have antennas on their head. That's symbolism. It's metaphoric symbolism that represents what we're capable of. And we are capable. Remember when cell phones had the antenna on the outside of the phone? Well, guess what? Now they're on the inside and you can't see them. We are able to connect to the universe, and we've always been able to connect to the universe in such a beautiful way. And I'm here, I feel like, to help, to teach people how to connect and to teach people how to be happy. If I can't do that, I have to come back. And that's the reason why I'm making this video. Because when I leave this place, I don't want to come back. This world, this physical world, Earth, that we live on, the future is not looking good. There are too many people, there's a lot of energy, and we don't know how to use it. And this planet is dying. And I feel as if it's my job here to help somebody, anybody, connect their physical world to the spirit world. And I do this because I like to, because it makes me feel good to help other people feel happiness like I feel. The name OVi came from meditation. Yes, my birth name is Jason. I hate that name. I didn't choose it. It was chosen for me. And that is not how it's supposed to work. We get a name, and just like other pagan cultures, it changes when you become an adult. You have a spirit quest, and your name changes. And I inadvertently experienced my spirit quest. I won't go into that, but I experienced it a long time ago. And it wasn't until I actually was able to connect fully to the spirit world and meditate and ask the simple question, who am I? that I was able to get the answer. And all I can say is that it was whispered to me on a breeze. And when I heard the name OVi, I recognized it. It felt familiar to me and sounded familiar to me. And it resonated in my soul. And I knew this is who I was. And this is who I've always been. Here's another coincidence about that. I have 3 sons. And my second son, who looks identical to me when I was 20 years younger, when he was born, I named him. And my ex-wife, my wife at the time, asked me what I wanted to name him while she was in the hospital bed. And I said, I wanted to pay homage to my oldest deceased brother, and I wanted to have one of his names as my son's name. And so I chose his middle name, which was Lucas. I didn't know what to name him originally, but before he was born, I was looking at some books, and I looked at a religious book with religious names in it. And the only name that came to me, that rang to me out of the book, was Obadiah. Now, the coincidence is that I chose that name, and when my ex-wife asked me why I chose that name out of the rest of them, she didn't like the name originally. I said, I don't know. I just want to call him Obi for short. O-B-I. And I had forgotten all about it because that was lifetimes ago, it feels like. It feels like forever ago. So when I made my spiritual connection just a few years ago, and I meditated, and the name OVi came to me, it wasn't until a few weeks later that I realized, after I took the name, that's why I named my son Obadiah, because I wanted to call him Obi. And I had forgotten all about it. But that name had been processing for many years. Even before my son was born, that name was in there somewhere inside of me. So, we all have these kind of weird little stories. But unless you can put it to words from deep in your brain where your spirit and your soul and your physical body connect, unless you can get that memory over that bridge inside of your brain, most people don't connect with it. That's unfortunate, because we all are successful, and here's the reason why. If you're alive on this planet right now, towards the end, if you're alive on this planet, that means that all of your ancestors, whoever they were successful. Do you know how many generations and generations and generations of humanity had to happen in order for you to be standing there or sitting there watching this video? Guess what? That makes your ancestors successful. It also makes you successful, that you're even alive. So grab that day that you wake up and harness it, and remember how it feels when your soul wakes up and you realize that you've been here for so much longer than you know. You realize that you can connect with your ancestors, and you realize that time is unreal and everlasting life exists. You start to become enlightened, and you realize so much more. And that's what I like to do. I like to help people connect. And this is my first video explaining how I operate and why I do the things I do. And maybe I'll make another one. But for now, that's enough for today. 30 minutes. Have a great day, and think about this. You're successful whether you want to be or not. So don't do damage to yourself. Get in touch with your soul. Pray. Whatever it is that you do, but connect. And remember, love with an open heart, and everything is going to be okay. Because you're successful. Have a great day.